She stood on a dusty street corner in Phoenix. Her voice, rich, haunting, unforgettable, echoed through the heat. But people only laughed, only mocked, only walked away. What they didn't know was that she was once a star. She had filled concert halls. She had top charts. And then, she vanished. But now, with nothing but her voice and a guitar, she's about to remind the world who she truly is. This is not just a story. It's a comeback. It's a reckoning. It's the voice beneath the dust. Before we begin, if powerful stories move you, if you believe in second chances and the kind of voice that rises from the ashes, then tap that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more soul-stirring stories like this one, and drop a comment below. Tell us where you think her voice belongs, in the spotlight or beneath the dust. Now settle in, because what you're about to hear, you won't forget. In the scorching streets of Phoenix, Arizona, a woman sings with the kind of voice that silences a crowd, yet most walk past her without listening. Mocked, ignored, and mistaken for just another lost soul, she plays her guitar beneath the weight of dust and memory. But what the world doesn't see is that this woman was once a star, a voice that once filled arenas and hearts across the country. Her name is Celeste, and she's not a stranger to music. She's a legend in hiding, a soul healing in plain sight. When a renowned music producer hears her voice by chance, the past and present collide. What follows is a journey of rediscovery, not just of fame but of purpose, truth, and power. As whispers of her identity spread and the world starts to remember, Celeste must decide if she's ready to step back into the light, or if the dust is where her voice belongs. The Voice Beneath the Dust is a deeply emotional story about survival, dignity, and the quiet strength of a woman who refuses to let her gift be forgotten. It's about music, but more than that, it's about the courage to rise again, even when the world has already written your ending. This is her beginning, and the silence is about to break. Disclaimer: the story you are about to hear is a work of fiction. All characters, names, events, and situations have been created solely for the purpose of storytelling. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or deceased, or real-life events is purely coincidental. This story is intended to provide moral lessons, motivation, and inspiration. It was created to encourage reflection, empathy, and personal growth through the power of narrative. Viewer discretion is advised for those sensitive to emotional or dramatic content. We invite you to experience this journey with an open heart and take from it the lessons that speak to you most. The Arizona sun was a heavy thing, draped over downtown Phoenix like a wool blanket soaked in fire. Heat shimmered off the pavement in restless waves, distorting outlines, softening edges. Somewhere along 3rd Avenue, wedged between a tired taco stand and a boarded-up pawn shop, a black woman stood with a chipped, honey-colored guitar resting against her hip. She wore a loose linen blouse, wrinkled from too many days of wear, and a long, faded skirt that brushed against her ankles like tired hands. Her shoes were cracked at the toes, and her hat, once burgundy, now sun-bleached and dust-kissed, hid most of her face. But when she tilted her head back to sing, the brim lifted just enough to reveal high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that belonged to someone who had lived 100 lives in one. People passed her without slowing down. A mother tugged her son's hand tighter. A man in a business suit scowled when her voice momentarily overpowered the playlist in his headphones. 2 teenage girls giggled behind their phones and filmed her from across the street. She noticed, of course. She always noticed. But Celeste Monroe had long stopped letting the sneers and whispers shape her voice. She sang to the rhythm of the world as it tried to ignore her. Didn't I love you when the skies were gray? Hold your hand when the storm wouldn't pass away? Her voice rose with the heat, raspy and raw, but rich like molasses poured slow over a memory. It had a texture that didn't belong to the street corner. It didn't belong to bus stops or cracked sidewalks. It was the kind of voice that filled concert halls, the kind of voice that turned silence sacred. A middle-aged man in cargo shorts tossed a few coins into her open guitar case. The sound of metal striking velvet rang out like a gunshot. Celeste paused for a breath, nodded at him softly, and went on. Every day she came here. Around 11 in the morning, after the sun had fully claimed the sky, she'd walk the 6 blocks from her one-room apartment and sat up beneath the same lamppost. It wasn't about the money. She never expected much. Most days she walked home with barely enough to cover dinner. But the singing, that was something else. That was medicine. Celeste had once known what it felt like to stand on stage with a spotlight warming her skin, a crowd swaying with her every note, and backup singers harmonizing like her own heartbeat duplicated in stereo. She had known what it felt like to be adored. But that was years ago, another life, another name. Now she sang without a microphone. No stage. No band. Just a battered six-string and a heart that still pulsed rhythm even when the world turned its back. From across the street, a woman with bright red lipstick and mirrored sunglasses smirked and muttered, "She really thinks she's somebody." Her friend laughed. Celeste caught it in her peripheral vision. Her fingers didn't stop strumming. Her voice didn't shake. But a small crack appeared in the wall she had built around herself. She let it be. Let the mockery hang in the air and dissolve in the heat. By the time evening fell, the city began to breathe again. Shadows stretched longer. Air softened. Celeste packed up her guitar and tucked the scattered coins into a side pocket of her canvas bag. Her steps were slow, deliberate as she made her way down the sidewalk. A few people nodded to her. One man offered a kind smile. Most looked past her as if she were nothing more than the heat rising from the pavement. She passed the record store that had gone out of business 5 months ago. The mural outside, once a colorful tribute to soul legends, was now defaced with graffiti. The word "remember" still showed through the black spray paint like a ghost's whisper. Back in her apartment, she filled a chipped mug with tap water and stared at the wall. It was blank. She liked it that way. No reminders. No photographs. No pieces of her old life peeking through. Celeste lay down on the twin mattress on the floor, her guitar resting beside her like a loyal dog. She closed her eyes and whispered the chorus to herself, soft enough that the words barely escaped her lips. "Didn't I hold you through the worst of the night? Didn't I sing when the world took the light?" In the distance, sirens wailed and someone shouted 2 floors down. But here in this room, the silence wrapped around her like a shawl. Celeste drifted into sleep with calloused fingers curled against the strings and a voice still echoing in her chest. Out there, the city had forgotten her. But her voice, buried beneath dust, pain, and time, had not forgotten itself. Not yet. It was the kind of day where the sun punched through the sky without apology. Even the birds seemed too tired to sing. Celeste took her place beneath the lamppost a little earlier than usual, drawn by a restless energy she couldn't explain. Her guitar case clicked open with a soft echo, and she tuned her strings by instinct. She didn't need a pitch pipe. Her ear had been trained long ago, back when she wore gold bracelets and rehearsed with orchestras. Today the flow of people was steady but indifferent. A jogger slowed down only to retie his shoe. A woman balancing a tray of iced coffees gave her a curious glance before disappearing into an office building. No one stayed. No one listened. Still, Celeste strummed and sang. "Tell me the truth, if I disappeared. Would you still know my voice or forget what you hear?" Her fingers danced along the fretboard. Sweat traced lines down her back. Each note landed like a soft knock on a door no one wanted to answer. 3 blocks away, an Escalade rolled to a stop at the intersection. It was sleek and dark, gleaming despite the dust. Inside, the driver drummed his fingers against the wheel. He was tall, caramel brown, with a salt and pepper beard and sunglasses that reflected the sprawl of the city. His name was Malcolm Reyes, and he wasn't supposed to be here today. He had flown into Phoenix on a whim. His mother had recently undergone knee surgery, and though she insisted she was fine, Malcolm knew better than to trust the casualness in her voice. So he came. He had spent the morning with her, making jokes, warming up soup, listening to her rant about her favorite soap opera. On his way back to the hotel, the heat turned up, traffic slowed, and a detour brought him down this unfamiliar stretch of asphalt. That's when he heard her. Her voice sliced through the closed windows of his car like a memory cracking open. It wasn't just beautiful. It was familiar. His hands froze on the steering wheel. For a moment, the world blurred and only the sound remained. He turned down the volume on the radio, leaned forward, squinted through the windshield. Across the street, standing beneath the lamppost, a woman in worn clothes and a brimmed hat played her guitar with the grace of someone who had played all her life. Her voice drifted on the heat, dusty, tender, broken, and bold at the same time. Malcolm knew voices. He had built his entire career on them. He had scouted raw talent in neighborhood cafes and subway tunnels. He had produced platinum records, engineered comebacks, shaped stars. But this wasn't raw talent. This was something rare, refined, lived in. He pulled over. Celeste saw the Escalade park, but she didn't pay it much attention. A few people always slowed down in luxury cars, either to mock or to gawk. She kept her eyes low and her voice steady. "Even the wind forgets my name, but I still sing just the same." Malcolm stepped out slowly, shielding his eyes from the glare. He crossed the street, each step deliberate. As he approached, the music grew clearer, more intimate. And then he saw her face. Even beneath the wide-brimmed hat, he recognized her. It had been over a decade, but he knew that jawline, those eyes. He remembered the posters, the magazine covers, the night she opened for a sold-out show in New Orleans and brought the crowd to their knees. He remembered C. Harmony. But she didn't look at him. Not directly. Her eyes hovered above his shoulder, her expression fixed in that practiced mask of distance. Malcolm stood there, arms folded, head tilted. He didn't want to scare her off. Didn't want to startle her into silence. So he just listened, letting her finish the verse. When the final note settled into the air, he spoke. "You ever record that one?" Her fingers froze on the strings. Celeste's eyes flicked toward him. "What?" He stepped closer, not too close. "The song you just sang. It sounds like something that should be on vinyl." She narrowed her eyes. "I write for me now. Not for records." Malcolm offered a nod. "I get that. But the world still needs to hear it." Silence stretched between them. The city buzzed behind his words, but Celeste heard the truth in his tone. She studied his face. Something in her stiffened. "Look," she said slowly, "I'm not interested in some pity project. You want to feel good about discovering a street performer? Go find someone else." Malcolm smiled, not condescending, not mocking. Just patient. "This isn't about pity," he said. "This is about legacy." Her breath caught. That word. Legacy. It scratched at a place she had buried deep. Malcolm lowered his sunglasses and met her eyes. "I know who you are, Celeste." She stiffened. "Or should I say, C. Harmony?" A wave passed over her face. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. Her hands trembled around the neck of the guitar, and for a moment she looked like she might run. But she didn't. Instead, she sat back down on her stool. "You're mistaken," she whispered. "No," Malcolm said gently. "I'm not." A beat passed. Then another. Finally, she looked at him fully. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with warning. "That woman's gone," she said. "Buried." Malcolm nodded, hands in his pockets. "Maybe. Or maybe she's just been waiting for the right time to come back." The sound of a car horn jolted them both. The city surged on, unaware of the moment unfolding on that corner. Malcolm reached into his back pocket and pulled out a business card. He didn't press it into her hand. Just set it inside her guitar case and stepped back. "I'll be in town for a few days," he said. "If you change your mind, call me." Celeste said nothing. Just watched as he turned and walked back across the street. She didn't pick up the card right away. But long after he had disappeared into the traffic, she stared at it. The name printed there was simple. No flash. No promises. Just Malcolm Reyes. And a number. Her fingers traced the edge of the card. Then, as the sun began to slip behind the skyline, she whispered a new melody to herself. Not for the passersby. Not even for the coins. But for the voice she thought she had buried long ago. The card stayed on her kitchen counter for 3 days. Celeste didn't touch it, didn't move it, didn't even let herself glance at it too long. It sat there like a loaded question, too heavy for words and too familiar to ignore. Every time she walked by, it whispered to her. Not in sound but in memory. The name Malcolm Reyes echoed in her mind louder than the city's morning rush. She had known of him back then. Everyone in the industry did. He was the one who turned broken voices into symphonies and rookies into legends. She remembered watching from the wings of an awards show once, his laugh rising above the velvet-draped crowd as he toasted champagne with someone twice her age and half her talent. They never crossed paths directly. He was orbiting another galaxy when she was burning through her own. Back then she was C. Harmony. The name had been given to her by a manager who thought it sounded smoother than Celeste Monroe. More marketable. More mysterious. She had agreed at the time. She agreed to many things she now wished she hadn't. And then, almost overnight, she had disappeared. The world didn't get the real reason. They got rumors. Was. Some claimed she was institutionalized. Others said she had a breakdown on tour and walked into the desert barefoot. A few fans insisted she died, that the industry had chewed her up and spit her into the wind. But Celeste knew the truth, and she carried it with her like a scar no one could see. On the 4th day, she poured herself a mug of lukewarm coffee, leaned against the counter, and finally picked up the card. The number was printed beneath his name in soft gray ink, no company logo, no fancy slogans. She rubbed her thumb across it. Imagine what it would feel like to call. Imagine what he might say. What she might say. She didn't dial. Instead, she pulled her guitar close and sat by the window. Morning light spilled across her floor, golden and quiet. She played through one of her older songs. A melody that used to echo through arenas. Her voice had aged since then, grown deeper, textured with gravel, but there was something in it that had never changed. That afternoon, while walking through the market for bread and fruit, a woman approached her. She was young, early 20s, maybe a college student. She wore headphones and carried a small sketchbook under one arm. "Excuse me," she said, a little breathless. "You're the woman who sings near 3rd Avenue, right?" Celeste hesitated, loaf of bread tucked beneath her arm. "I guess I am. I recorded you last week. Just a short clip, I hope that's okay. I posted it online." Celeste's heart tightened. "You what?" "I didn't mean anything bad. I thought your voice was beautiful. Like really beautiful. And now people are asking who you are. Some are saying you sound like that singer from a long time ago. See something?" Celeste's throat dried. She forced a polite nod. "Thank you. But I'd rather not be recorded again." The young woman's face flushed with embarrassment. "Oh, I'm sorry. I just thought." "It's all right," Celeste said gently. "Just let the music stay on the street." The girl nodded and backed away. Celeste turned and walked toward home, every step feeling heavier than the last. Later that evening, she searched herself online for the first time in years. Her hands trembled over the keys. She typed C Harmony and hit enter. Dozens of old images popped up. Her face younger, glossier. Interviews. Concert posters. Snippets of her singing. A picture of her on a red carpet in a silver dress she had long since donated to a thrift store. She stared at the face that looked like hers but wasn't. The smile in those photos felt foreign now. Like a costume she had once worn and lost somewhere along the road. The next morning, Celeste returned to the street corner. But something had changed. She could feel it. People slowed down more. A man in a food truck honked and gave her a thumbs up. 2 teenagers whispered as they passed, one of them mouthing C Harmony with a wide-eyed grin. She clenched her jaw and focused on the strings beneath her fingers. She had come here for peace. For invisibility. And now the dust was starting to lift. Across town, Malcolm sat in the corner booth of a quiet restaurant. His phone buzzed with alerts and links. A clip had gone viral. 30 seconds of a woman in a hat, singing like the sun was setting inside her throat. The title read, "Mystery Street Singer in Phoenix Sounds Like a Lost Legend." Malcolm didn't smile. He just sipped his coffee and nodded to himself. The world was listening again. And so was he. Celeste stared at the screen for what felt like hours. The video had passed 100,000 views. It was a shaky phone clip, the angle awkward, the background noise cutting in and out, but her voice carried above it all like a current breaking through static. She hadn't meant for this to happen. Her music was supposed to stay on the street. Anonymous. Passing. A whisper among traffic and sun-scorched sidewalks. But something had changed, and deep inside, she knew it wasn't just the video. The knock came just after sunset. It was soft but certain. Celeste opened the door halfway, her guitar still slung over her shoulder. On the other side stood Malcolm, wearing a casual jacket and holding a bag of takeout. "I brought food," he said. "Didn't know what you liked, so I went with tacos. Seems safe." She didn't answer right away, her eyes narrowing. "You followed me home?" "No," he said quickly. "Someone recognized your voice and sent the clip to a friend of mine. I just asked the right questions. Phoenix isn't that big when you know where to look." She crossed her arms. "I told you I wasn't interested. And I heard you," Malcolm said calmly. "But now the world's asking about you. I thought you deserved a chance to answer in your own way." Celeste opened the door a little wider. The scent of grilled meat and cilantro filled the space between them. Her stomach growled louder than her resistance. She let him in. They ate at her small kitchen table, legs brushing now and then beneath its narrow frame. She didn't say much. Malcolm did most of the talking, but not in a pushy way. He told her stories of other artists who had disappeared and re-emerged, of battles they fought and songs they wrote in the quiet years. "I'm not them," she said finally, wiping her fingers on a napkin. "No," he agreed. "You're not. You're better." The compliment slid through her like warmth, but she masked it with a tired sigh. "What do you want from me?" "Just one session," he said. "Come to the studio. Try one song. That's it." She looked at him hard. "And if I say no?" "Then I leave you alone," he promised. "No more calls. No more visits. But if you say yes." He didn't finish the sentence. "You didn't have to." The next morning she stood outside the recording studio, arms folded, heart thundering. The building was tucked between 2 unremarkable storefronts on a quieter street. She hadn't been inside one of these in almost 11 years. Malcolm met her at the door. He didn't say much. Just nodded as if to say thank you for coming. The interior smelled of old wood and leather. Faded posters of iconic albums lined the hallway. They passed the sound engineer chatting with someone on the phone, and another young singer practicing scales behind a half-closed door. Celeste's footsteps slowed. Every part of her was screaming to turn back. Malcolm noticed. "You okay?" "No," she whispered, but she kept walking. They stepped into a dim room lined with padded walls. The mic stood in the center like a patient old friend, cables snaking across the floor, instruments resting along the sides. A soft chair waited beside the glass window where the engineer sat, ready. "You don't have to rush," Malcolm said. "We've got the whole day." Celeste nodded, barely breathing. She walked to the mic and slipped the headphones on. They smelled like dust and dreams. She closed her eyes. The engineer's voice crackled through the headset. "Rolling whenever you're ready." Her fingers trembled as they hovered over the strings of her guitar. Then, slowly she began. The first note was thin, wavering. Her voice cracked slightly, but she kept going. She sang the song she'd written on a winter night 5 years ago, after waking from a dream of her mother's humming and an old church choir. "Even if the world forgets, I remember how it felt, when I sang without fear." And the silence finally knelt. The room didn't move. Time didn't move. Only the sound of her voice did. By the time she reached the final verse, her eyes were wet. Her hands were steady. When the last chord faded, no one said a word. Not the engineer. Not Malcolm. Silence. Pure and thick. Then the headset clicked off. Malcolm stepped into the booth, eyes wide, hands open. "That," he said, "is the voice the world's been waiting for." Celeste pulled the headphones down and exhaled. She didn't say anything, but for the first time in a long time she smiled. By the end of the week, the song was everywhere. Not the old, shaky video from the street. That clip had been overtaken by something cleaner, something raw yet refined. The studio recording of her new track, unofficial, unmixed, and unmastered, had somehow leaked. Malcolm swore it wasn't him. The engineer promised the same. But Celeste didn't care anymore. The song was out, and it was breathing. People didn't just hear it. They felt it. The internet lit up with questions. Who was this woman? Was she really C Harmony? Had she come back after all these years? Theories spread like wildfire. Some claimed she was an imposter. Others swore she had never left, just hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right time. Music blogs compared old videos with new ones, dissecting her voice note by note. Fans dug through archives, screenshots, backstage footage. They posted side-by-side images of her face then and now. Her cheekbones sharper now. Her eyes heavier, but unmistakable. Celeste watched it all unfold from her tiny apartment, the desert light spilling across her living room. She saw the headlines stacking up, each one trying to claim a piece of her. The return of C Harmony? Street singer sparks industry frenzy. Phoenix woman's voice reignites a generation. One morning, she stepped out for groceries and found a camera crew waiting. They didn't approach her aggressively, just lingered near the market entrance. The moment she was spotted, someone called out. "Excuse me, miss, are you C Harmony?" She froze. Shoppers turned. A teenager's phone was already aimed at her, recording. Another woman whispered behind her hand, eyes wide. Celeste turned around and walked home without buying a thing. That night, she sat with Malcolm in the studio lounge. Her hair was tied back, eyes tired, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of chamomile tea. The room was quiet except for the soft hiss of the air conditioning and the ticking of a vintage clock above the door. "This is exactly why I disappeared," she said. "It's never just about the music." Malcolm leaned back, watching her. "No, it never is. But that doesn't mean you don't belong here." "I didn't ask for any of this," she whispered. "No," he said gently. "But maybe it's been asking for you." She looked away, biting her lip. "They want the woman from the posters. The voice without the story. They don't know what happened." "Then tell them," he said. "On your terms." The next day, Celeste recorded again. Not for a leak. Not for the media. For herself. For the years she lost. For the woman she became when the lights went out and the fans stopped clapping. The studio filled with the sound of truth. Not polished. Not perfect. Just real. By the time the second track ended, she sat on the floor, guitar resting beside her, eyes closed. Malcolm didn't speak. He knew better now. Outside the studio, her name was rising. A prominent music magazine published a long-form piece tracing her early career, disappearance, and the speculation around her re-emergence. They didn't have the full story, but they asked the right questions. A former bandmate even gave a quote. She had a voice that could hush a storm. But she was hurting. People didn't see it. Or maybe they didn't want to. Another piece featured a street vendor from 3rd Avenue who had unknowingly watched history unfold. She sang like she was trying to stitch the world back together. Still, Celeste refused interviews. She didn't need to speak. Her voice, now back in motion, was saying everything. Malcolm called her one night, excitement in his voice. We got offers. Major ones. A showcase in LA, a residency in New York. Labels are talking albums. Tours. She let out a slow breath. And after a long pause, she said, one step at a time. A few days later, she walked through the local park alone, hoodie pulled up, guitar strapped to her back. There, beneath the same fig tree where she'd first performed after years of silence, she stopped. No cameras. No crew. No stage. Just a few pigeons, a breeze, and a little boy watching from the nearby bench, his mother holding his hand. She sat down. She played. And the city listened again. Not because they were told to. Because they wanted to. The showcase in Los Angeles was held in a private venue tucked into the Hollywood Hills. No posters. No paparazzi. Just dim lights, velvet curtains, and an invitation-only crowd of producers, critics, and a few bold-faced names from the music world. Celeste wasn't listed on the program. Her name hadn't appeared on flyers or inside whispers at the door. But the moment she stepped onto that small stage, barefoot beneath the spotlight, a silence fell across the room like a tide pulling back. For a few seconds, no one breathed. Malcolm sat off to the side, his arms folded, eyes locked on her. He hadn't needed to prepare her. Not anymore. The streets of Phoenix had already done that. The dust and heat, the long days playing to passing feet, had built something in her stronger than fame. Celeste adjusted the mic. She looked over the crowd, then down at the neck of her guitar. Her voice started low, husky with memory. She didn't introduce herself. She just sang. A song no one had heard before. One she had written weeks ago, during the strange, dizzy days of rediscovery. It wasn't about being lost or found. It wasn't about pain or revival. It was about truth. The kind that wrapped around your bones. The kind you don't speak because it sings itself. The room held its breath as she reached the final note, a haunting falsetto that slipped into silence like smoke into moonlight. When it ended, there was no applause. Not at first. Just stillness. And then, a slow rising ovation. Not polite. Not performative. Earnest. People stood. Some clapped hard, some with tears on their cheeks, some with hands pressed to their hearts. Celebrities who had once forgotten her name now whispered it like a secret rediscovered. See Harmony. The name was no longer just a memory. It was a presence. That night, Malcolm sat with her on the balcony of her temporary hotel suite, overlooking the Los Angeles skyline. The city lights flickered like old dreams. You did it, he said. Celeste didn't answer at first. She leaned forward, resting her arms on the balcony railing. I feel like I am it, she whispered. He looked at her, head tilted. I'm not the comeback. I'm not the mystery. I'm just me. I think that's enough now. He nodded. A breeze passed between them. Down below, the streets hummed with people who had no idea that the woman who once vanished into silence had just rewritten her legacy upstairs. In the days that followed, news spread fast. The Voice returns read one headline. A queen of soul rises from the dust read another. Record labels offered contracts. Streaming platforms reached out for exclusives. Late-night shows begged for appearances. But Celeste turned most of it down. Not out of pride. Out of clarity. She didn't need to chase what had already found her. Instead, she chose what mattered. A new album, written by her, sung by her, controlled by her. No autotune. No industry polish. Just songs about love, faith, grief, and light. Songs that felt like sunrise after a long night. She gave a single interview. It was filmed in her Phoenix apartment, the camera crew small, the setting warm. She wore jeans, no makeup, hair in a wrap. She told her story, not in every detail, but with enough truth to settle the myths. I stepped away, she said, because I had to. Because the voice inside me needed to get quiet for a while before it could sing again. The interviewer leaned forward gently. Are you ready now? Celeste smiled, her voice calm. I never stopped being ready. I just stopped needing permission. By the time the interview aired, her new single had climbed the charts. Not because of a marketing team, not because of hype, but because it moved people. Because it reached something inside them that had been sleeping. On the final day of that week, she returned to the street corner where it all began. She stood there in the fading heat, dressed in the same simple clothes, guitar in hand. A few people recognized her. But they didn't ask for selfies. They stood quietly and listened. The music rose like it always had, from soul to sky. It was a warm evening in Phoenix when Celeste stepped onto the small outdoor stage at a local festival, set beneath strings of golden bulbs and paper lanterns swaying gently in the breeze. The crowd wasn't enormous, just a mix of families, neighbors, curious locals, and a few wide-eyed travelers who had heard whispers of something special happening that night. No flashing signs, no grand announcement, just a woman and her guitar. The sun dipped low, brushing the desert with a soft orange glow, and children chased bubbles near the edges of the grass. Vendors called out soft greetings as they closed down their booths. And at the center of it all, Celeste stood in the quiet before the first note. She wore a soft blue dress, modest and flowing, her hair tied back in a silk scarf. Her hands, calloused and worn from years of absence and revival, rested gently on the strings. Malcolm stood near the soundboard, his face unreadable. He didn't need to coach her, guide her, or say a word. The time for pushing was long gone. All that remained was presence. And music. She opened with an old hymn. One her mother used to sing while washing dishes, the window open to the heat and sun. The melody wrapped itself around the crowd like a blanket. Eyes closed, heads bowed. Some sang along in soft whispers, the kind you don't even realize you're making. Then came the original songs. Stories of wandering. Songs of desert nights and city alleys. A track she called Rain in July, about hope returning when you least expect it. Another called What the Silence Knew, where she let her voice soar into a falsetto that made strangers weep. And finally, near the end, she played Beneath the Dust. The song had grown with her. It was born in the alleys, hummed into cracked sidewalks. Now it lived in speakers and headphones across the country. But here, under these stars, it returned to its roots. Raw, tender, powerful. Her voice cracked near the final chorus, not from fatigue but from feeling. She didn't hold it back. When she finished, the applause didn't come in a rush. It grew slowly, a gentle tide of hands meeting hands. Not for the performance, but for the journey. And Celeste stood there, not as the fallen star, not as the legend returned, but as the woman who had survived. She waved once, stepped down, and disappeared into the crowd with the same grace that had once carried her away from it. Later that night, as she sat outside her apartment with Malcolm, the neighborhood quiet and the cicadas humming low, she leaned her head back and stared up at the moon. "You ever think it could have gone another way?" she asked. Malcolm took a sip of his coffee. "Sure, lots of ways. But I'm glad it went this way." She didn't reply, just smiled, small and knowing. The next day, the videos from the festival began to circulate. But this time there was no mystery, no speculation. People knew her story now. They knew her name. What mattered was that the music still carried weight. And Celeste, Sea Harmony, wasn't chasing the charts anymore. She was planting roots. She started a community music program at the old church on Jefferson Street, where kids could learn to write, sing, and play for free. No auditions, no labels, just sound and soul. She taught harmony classes on Sundays, taught silence too. And every so often she would still play at the park. No cameras, no fanfare. Just her guitar, and a quiet circle of those lucky enough to hear. Because some voices don't need to scream to be remembered. Some songs don't fade with the applause. And some stars, even when hidden by dust, never stop shining. The end. Here are 7 moral lessons drawn from the voice beneath the dust. 1. Your value does not fade with silence. Celeste disappeared from the public eye. Not because she had failed, not because her voice had lost its power, but because life had demanded a pause. For years, her silence was mistaken for defeat. But the truth is, we all go through seasons when we must step back, not to quit but to heal. Her voice, once muted by grief and trauma, returned stronger because it was grounded in truth. This story reminds us that stepping away does not mean disappearing forever. Our value remains even in quiet. 2. Authenticity outshines performance. When Celeste returned to music, she did not do it wearing a glittering mask. She sang barefoot in worn dresses on the streets of Arizona. Her voice wasn't filtered or dressed in industry glamour. And yet, it touched people more deeply than any polished act. Why? Because it was real. The lesson here is that the world doesn't need a performance. It needs honesty. Who we truly are, when expressed without apology, has the power to move others more than any costume or show ever could. 3. Do not underestimate the broken path. Celeste's journey was not a straight line. It twisted through sorrow, abandonment, and recovery. She worked jobs that drained her, wandered streets where no one saw her worth, and battled inner storms no one could name. But all of it, every scar, every moment of despair, was not wasted. The cracks in her life allowed something honest to grow. This teaches us that broken paths still lead somewhere beautiful. Even when it feels like we've strayed too far, we may still be on the road to becoming something greater than we imagined. 4. Public opinion cannot define personal truth. When she sang on the streets, people mocked her, laughed, took videos for the wrong reasons. They saw a woman in tattered clothes and assumed she was a joke. But they did not know her story. They could not measure her worth. And even after her voice reclaimed the spotlight, people still tried to name her, to control the narrative. But Celeste stayed grounded in her truth. She told her story on her terms. This is a reminder that the world may mislabel us, but it cannot rewrite our truth. Only we can do that. 5. True purpose does not expire. Even after years in silence, Celeste's gift remained, matured. It deepened. The streets of Phoenix became her stage, and her voice became more than a melody, it became a calling. She did not sing for charts anymore. She sang to heal, to connect, to give back. This teaches us that our true purpose is not a trend or a phase. It is not something we age out of or lose with time. If it is real, it will wait for us. And when we return to it, it will welcome us home. 6. Healing is not weakness. It is courage. Celeste stepped away from fame because she needed to survive. In a world that glorifies constant motion and endless visibility, choosing to rest, to mourn, and to rebuild in private is a radical act of strength. The story shows us that healing is not hiding. It is not a failure. It is the brave, necessary work of returning to oneself. And when we heal fully, we can offer the world something far more powerful than performance. We offer a truth. 7. Impact begins with presence, not platforms. In the end, Celeste didn't need stadiums or streaming numbers to make a difference. She made her greatest impact in a local park, on a sun-warmed sidewalk, and in a community music room filled with children. She planted seeds where she stood with what she had. This teaches us that we do not need massive platforms to change the world. We only need presence. We only need to show up, with heart, with skill, with soul. That is where real impact begins. Final reflection. The voice beneath the dust is not just the story of a woman who sang her way back from silence. It is the story of dignity restored, of gifts reawakened, of truth reclaimed. It reminds us that what is buried by the world may still shine if it is rooted in purpose. That even in our lowest, quietest moments, we are still becoming who we were meant to be. Let the world say what it will. Let the crowds come and go. In the end, what matters most is not how loud the applause is. It is how deeply the music lives. And Celeste's music, born beneath dust and pain, did not vanish. It remained. And it changed everything. Thank you for watching and listening to The Voice Beneath the Dust. We hope Celeste's journey touched your heart, reminded you of the strength in silence, the beauty in healing, and the power of never giving up on your purpose. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video. It helps us reach more people who need stories like this. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring, emotional, and meaningful storytelling. We've got many more journeys waiting for you, stories of hope, courage, second chances, and quiet victories. So be sure to check out the other videos on the channel. And if Celeste's story meant something to you, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear what it sparked in your heart. Until next time, keep believing in the power of your voice, even if the world forgets. You don't have